From Arlington High School's student-led, student-run newscast. This is TigerClash on AHS Tiger Life.
Hello, and thank you for joining me for this edition of TigerClash, where we talk about the big stories in our community and around the world. I'm your host, Noah Certion. In a moment, I'll introduce our panel, but first, let's take a look at today's hot topic. Communities across the U.S. are mourning. That's after 3 mass shootings in the month of November that claimed 14 lives. The most recent one in Chesapeake, Virginia, where a gunman opened fire inside a Walmart store. Survivors of that shooting say that the gunman walked into the break room and began shooting. Police say that 6 people were killed at that store. Officials identified the suspect as 31-year-old Andre Bing. Bing worked at that Walmart location since 2010. Walmart has confirmed that he was the overnight team lead there. He died at the scene from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. A gunman opens fire in a Colorado LGBTQ nightclub. Police there say that he walked into the club queue in Colorado Springs and immediately opened fire, killing 5 and injuring at least 19 others. Colorado Springs police identified the gunman as 22-year-old Lee Aldrich. Aldrich is behind bars now as he is held without bail. 3 people were gunned down when a football player at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville killed 3 current football players, including former Arlington football standout Devin Chandler. 2 people were also injured in this shooting. Police arrested 22-year-old Christopher Darnell Jones Jr. in this mass shooting. The suspect was on the UVA football team in 2018 as a freshman but never played any games. Now, in the wake of these mass shootings, the question comes again now, are stricter gun control measures needed? Joining me now to discuss our hot topic is Cameron Cruz, who is for stricter gun laws, and Brandon Hendricks, who is against it. And I'm going to start with you, Cameron, now. Why do you think that America should have stricter gun laws?
I think that America should have stricter gun laws because I think that there's not enough ways for the people to decide whether or not somebody is fit to own a gun. I don't think guns should be outlawed altogether, but I do think that there should be like harder measures in order to obtain a gun.
Mm-hmm. And Brandon, why are you against stricter gun laws?
I think it's very important that we are able to defend ourselves and to have that free right as Americans to be able to defend ourselves and in the wake of tyranny, rebel against our government if needed.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I'm going to start with the recent Gallup News poll. It shows that 57% of Americans are in favor of stricter gun control measures, while 32% oppose new measures, and 10% of Americans want them to stay the same. Now, Cameron, I want to start with you again. Why do you believe that over a majority of Americans are in favor of stricter gun laws?
I think that they're just kind of tired of it, tired of this happening. I think they're also pretty emotional, and I think a lot of them have realized, the people that have attained the guns have gotten them a lot of the times not legally. Like, for example, in the Parkland shooting, he wasn't supposed to have a gun, but he got it anyways, you know? So I feel like a lot of people just wish it was harder for people to get them and there was more consequences if you didn't have them locked up properly.
And Brandon, why do you think that? Do you think that this poll shows a fair representation of people who either who don't want stricter gun laws or want them to remain the same?
I do think it's a very fair representation because a lot of people in the U.S. have been affected by this. I mean, I know personally I have as well. It's just very difficult to make such a large decision on such a large scale.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now I want to go to a study that tracked individual gun laws over time. It suggests that states can reduce gun deaths significantly by limiting children's access to guns, restricting concealed carry permits, restricting stand your ground policies, and universal background checks. And I'll give this to either one if he wants to start first. Do you think universal background checks would actually reduce the number of firearms?
Probably it would, but I think also it opens up the door for universal background checks, what are they checking for, you know? If the government's doing it, then I think it opens the door for there to be some level of corruption, so I think that's why maybe it would be harder to do, because, if the government is, deciding whether or not somebody could get it, through a background check, then it could be, the whole purpose of the gun amendment is so you can defend yourself against the government. So I think that it would be hard, but I think that it could be done. I think that it needs to be done.
What about you?
I definitely think that the universal gun law or the universal background checks would definitely make it more difficult for people who are planning to do these heinous crimes. However, if a person is determined enough, they are going to get a gun, and that's pretty much a closed case. If someone wants it that bad enough, they're going to get it any way that they want.
All right, and I'm going to go back to you, Brandon. People keep lots of guns for different reasons, maybe for hunting, home protection, target shooting, etc. What would you say to people who think that the problem is that there are just too many people with too many guns?
It's definitely difficult to console a person that is afraid of that because it's true, guns are a very scary thing if put in the hands of someone who doesn't know how to use it. However, generally people with a lot of guns do have that extra training and they are qualified to have those guns. I think it should really make them feel safer that there are people like that.
Mm-hmm. All right. Do you have anything to add on to that?
I think that I would sort of agree with him on that, but I also think that saying that it's hard to limit guns is a reason why we can't. I think that if there was a need to, I think there is a need to limit in some way guns. I think that we need to, yeah.
All right. Let's talk about red flag laws now. For our viewers, those are gun control laws that permit a state court to order the temporary removal of firearms from a person who they may believe is a present danger to others or themselves. Do you think that these laws are necessary?
Like I said, it would be hard to do because the whole purpose of the gun amendments are to protect yourself from the government. And so the government deciding whether or not to take away a gun from you would be a little like challenging to figure out how. But I think maybe putting it in the hands of like something that isn't super attached to the government, like maybe like a police station, maybe. I'm not sure how that would work, but I don't think it should necessarily be like the government deciding you can't have a gun, like immediately, like red flag laws.
Mm-hmm. And what's your take on these red flag laws?
I definitely agree with you on that fact, but I definitely think it would be very safe to have these red flag laws only if there's a person with history of violence and is probably thought to commit another crime, and who knows. I think it would be, on the safer side, it would be okay to do that, but I do definitely agree that it's a little redundant for the government to make laws about something that should be used to overthrow it if need be.
Mm-hmm.
Can I say something else on that?
Yeah, sure.
I think that if somebody has history, they're probably a felon, like history of violence, and they couldn't own a gun anyway. But, so I don't know how that would work. Like, if they had a gun, but they were a felon, then it would be illegal, in the first place.
Well, that's also not in every single case, not every single person who's committed, who has assaulted someone. I mean, it could just be hand-to-hand. I mean,
Yeah.
Not every single person is going to be a felon, and some people are still able to get handguns or rifles.
All right. Let's move on now. Tennessee Governor Bill Lee has proposed a permitless carry bill, which became law last year. This law means that you won't need a permit in most cases to carry a gun. But in a city like Memphis, where we've seen time after time, we've broken homicide records year after year, and most of the guns used in violent crimes here are actually stolen. Do you think this law actually makes us safer?
I definitely think that, in theory, this is a very good law. However, it does kind of break down in places like Memphis or Chicago or Detroit, where there is a large number of homicide deaths. It makes it a whole lot harder for police officers or any law enforcement to really distinguish who has a stolen gun or who actually it's their actual gun.
What's your take on this red flag law?
I think I agree with him on that. Like, I think that the permitless carry bill could maybe be helpful in situations, but in the majority of situations, it really wouldn't be.
Mm-hmm. All right, and we hear about this a lot in the summer, children being left unsupervised with guns. There have been many cases where children actually die from this. Should guns be hidden a lot more carefully in homes?
Yes, like in the Parkland shooting, I'm pretty sure that he got the gun and he was not supposed to have the gun. I think that there needs to be laws like I think there should be penalties if you don't lock up your gun safely, because I think that's why a lot of these shootings happen, because people have access to guns that they weren't supposed to get.
And do you think that guns, if they're in homes, do you think that they need to be locked away from children?
Absolutely. I think that's almost a no-brainer. It'd be very, very unsafe to have just guns out in the open, because kids are curious, and teenagers are even more curious. If they think they can get away with it, they're going to do it. So I think that if they have guns readily available to them, even if they're just going to shoot like little stuff in their backyard, it could still be very, very dangerous.
Mm-hmm. All right, really quickly now, I want to turn to guns inside of schools. We've witnessed multiple mass shootings inside schools, one this year in Uvalde, Texas, and then recently one in St. Louis. The shooters there are just teens. What do you think this has to say about guns in our country? I'll let either one of you all start this one.
I think that it says that guns are a little too easy to get.
I would definitely agree with you on that, but I think that in a lot of those cases, a lot of these students were bullied, especially the one in Uvalde, Texas. That child was severely bullied, and I think that it needs to be the focus of schools to actually limit the amount of bullying or actually do something about it, or those kids are going to feel desperate to do whatever that they want or what they think they need to do to fix that problem.
All right, now if we wanted to satisfy both sides of the argument, what do you think it would be?
I would probably say that we definitely need to make it a little bit more secure to get guns. However, I don't think that they should limit it too much.
I think we kind of agree. We pretty much agree mostly. So I would say the same.
Okay. All right. We've covered a lot of ground here on this edition of TigerClash on gun control. I want to thank our panel today, but first, before we go, I want to get final thoughts from you two on this topic. Whichever one.
I definitely think that it is important that a lot of people in this country know how to use guns. So I don't think that it should be limited to just adults in that manner. I think that kids should definitely know how to use them, but I think that they definitely need to be supervised. And that these stricter gun laws can be good, but it can also be taken to an extent where it can become very difficult for us as Americans to do what we need to.
Cameron, do you have any final thoughts?
I think that first I think that it'd be best to maybe keep the government largely out of deciding who's allowed to get a gun. Because like I said, the whole entire point of the gun amendments was so that you could peg yourself against the government. But I do think that there needs to be more screenings maybe, and screenings that America can vote on, like what would be acceptable as criteria, so that it's not really like the government deciding. I am in favor of gun control in that way.
All right, that was a good conversation. Thank you all. Well, that does it for us. We thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Noah Certion. We hope that you take care of yourself, and we'll see you next time on TigerClash.